Welcome to Wargaming Recon. I am your host, Jonathan J. Reinhardt. Wargaming Recon is the only member of the TSR Podcast Network to discuss historical and New England gaming. This is a very interesting and enjoyable episode, at least for us, and I hope for you as well, where we have not only myself, but my buddy and friend and co-host, Mr. Adrian Benson. Adrian, how are you?
I'm just great, John. Thanks.
And we have a special guest on today because of you. Do you want to introduce them?
Now you can go ahead and do the intros. You know how this works. But yeah, I did kind of hook the whole thing up, so I'll take the credit for that.
Well, yeah, and I don't know if you wanted to do the lead in. You don't often to get the fame and the spotlight on you in the beginning of the show.
Nor do I want it.
Alrighty, well that's why I introduce you and everyone gets to hear me first. So we are both fans of a certain YouTube channel that goes by the name of Little Wars TV. Maybe all of you, or at least some of you, I hope all of you, have heard of it and watched it. And we're very, very lucky to be joined by one of the people who you've hopefully gotten to know and love on Little Wars. I want to introduce the one and only Steve. Steve, how are you?
Oh, great, John. Thank you very much for having me. And to know me is to love me. You got that absolutely correct. I'm very lovable.
I think so.
There's no question about that. Yeah. Oh my word! So yeah, no, it was kind of a weird. I was at Historicon just on a day trip in 2018. My wife and I she was in the area for business, and Historicon was going on. I was like, geez, I haven't been for like 8 years. Let's pop over and see what's going on. She came with me. We were standing in the registration line, and there was 3 or 4 guys, I think, in the line with us waiting to register with Little Wars TV T-shirts on. I was like, who are these guys? I've never heard of them before. And then when I got home from the con, I looked it up and I was like, this is great. These guys are awesome. So that's kind of how I heard about Little Wars.
Well, great. The other way that you possibly would have heard about us if you didn't run into some of us in the registration line would be the flyers I posted above the urinals. I figured that was a great place for people to find out about us.
That's awesome.
Everybody right there, eye level. That's the way to go. But actually, no one had heard of us as of a year ago. It was only at Historicon that we really kind of had our coming out party. And now here we are a year later, and things have gone much better than I think anybody on the team ever imagined.
Yeah, it seems like you guys have really taken off because, like I say, I went to the channel obviously and started checking it out, and it was like there wasn't a whole lot there pre that time, and I was like, wow, they must be brand new, and it was like. Yeah, I was really happy to find out about it. It's an impressive rollout, I guess. Let me put it that way. But I guess the club has been going on a lot longer than the actual YouTube channel, right?
Oh, sure. The club, I think, has been going on for almost 20 years. I haven't been there from the beginning. I didn't even live in the area.
Yeah.
I've probably been there for about closer to maybe 8 or 9 years.
Yeah.
But, Chal, Keith, then, a little bit after that, Greg, all, regulars on Little Wars were really the originators of the club that we have here in PA.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So. For those who don't know, what's the elevator pitch for what Little Wars TV is?
Well, I don't like riding elevators, so can we make it an escalator pitch?
Sure.
Okay.
Moving sidewalk.
It's a channel that combines the interesting aspects of military history with tabletop wargaming and recreating the battles from history on the tabletop and exploring different strategy with a bunch of idiots who think they're pretty funny.
And that's one of the things that I found kind of unique and interesting about Little Wars TV, about your YouTube channel, that some of the channels are missing, is the blending of the actual history with the gameplay as well. Because obviously there's tons of game channels out there, and a lot of them are really good, but not a whole lot of them approach it in the same way you guys do. With the okay, this is the actual history of the battle, and here we are trying to recreate it with whatever set of rules, whatever game we're playing.
Sure. And that was a conscious decision. When Greg and I really kind of started the idea for this project, which was now coming up on 2.5, 3 years, I think, the idea wasn't to do something that was just for gamers. Obviously, we knew that gamers would be interested, but really the idea was to try and use what we wanted to do to for lack of a better term, evangelize the hobby. And how do you do that? You don't do that by just appealing to people who are already in the hobby. You try and draw in people from outside. And we thought that the history section would be a great way to do that. And we've certainly seen it, whether it's from our comments or emails that we've gotten since we launched a year ago. There have been a lot of people that are just drawn in because, they see something titled, Marengo or Guadalcanal, and they click on it, not expecting that it's going to turn into a war game, but then it does, and they stick around and go, this is a really cool hobby.
Right.
So we've been very gratified that our initial goal for the channel seems to be, well, we seem to be achieving it on some level.
Yeah, that's a good thing. John and I, mostly we're surrounded around here in our area by mostly like fantasy, the 40K type games.
I think we all are.
Like that. Yeah, that's where the money is. So that's what the stores sell. But one of the big conventions around here is primarily a tabletop game and role playing convention. But we have in the past always run a historical miniatures game there, or tried to. We haven't managed to do it every year, but basically with the same goal in mind, only though not nearly as organized. To try and draw in some of the people who are playing 40K or whatever, and get them involved in Revolutionary War, World War II.
Sure.
With I have to say limited success, some success, but not as much as we would like to see.
Well, I think and I had my own thoughts about why some of that might be, and certainly I've seen the same type of phenomenon. But now, since we've gotten to know the Hawks folks down in Maryland, Buck Cerutti, who we interviewed for the channel, and his approach, and then also certainly since we started up our collaboration with WSS, War Game Soldiers and Strategy magazine, and working with them to kind of explore the data that they pulled down in the Great Wargaming Survey. I think I'm getting to see some of the empirical evidence behind what I think we all suspect. And a lot of that is, it's age related. You're not going to have a lot of really, really young kids who are into the historical stuff. They start with the fantasy and the sci-fi, but then as they get older, if they know that historical gaming is out there, suddenly they're a little bit more interested in that. They never all give up completely on the fantasy or sci-fi. I mean, Keith from Little Wars is a primary example of that. But as long as there's some visibility, as those younger gamers get older, I think a lot of them do gravitate to the historicals, and that's really where the hobby can find fertile ground for recruitment, I think.
Yeah, I think I agree. There's another convention near us that it's Huzzah, which is run by Maine Historical Wargamers. They've got a what do they call it, John? The cadet program, yeah, that is specifically geared toward teen and preteen players and try and draw them into the hobby. So, and they've been doing pretty well with that, I believe.
Well, that's great, and I think also what's probably going to help as well as you see the increasing popularity of game systems like Bolt Action, Cruel Seas, the Warlord stuff, which we haven't covered a whole lot on the channel. We will have a Bolt Action game in our second season, which just started, but I think there are a lot of serious, quote unquote, serious historical gamers who look at those game systems and go, well, that's not real wargaming. I mean, I need something much crunchier, and that's great for them. But the fact is, you can have a historical war game that isn't super complex. Yeah, and if it's serving as some sort of bridge to get people from the sci-fi fantasy into the more hardcore historical wargaming, how is it a bad thing?
Yeah, it's not a bad thing at all. And you're right. A lot of people kind of poo-poo Warlord with their, simplistic game systems, which I guess in some way they are. But the great thing about them is that they're very approachable. Warlord provides, for somebody who's brand new to historicals, maybe doesn't know much about it, they provide the, the one-stop shopping experience, right, the same way Games Workshop does, which is a huge help. I think Warlord is great. I mean, obviously they have business reasons for doing that as well, but I don't understand people who complain about it either. Well,
I mean, and here's the other thing. I don't know how you guys feel. I have played Bolt Action a few times. It's fun. It's fun.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
We're playing games for fun, right? Now, sure. Sometimes, like with our Gettysburg event, we want to seriously explore some historical things, which maybe Bolt Action isn't going to be set up for, not just because it's not Civil War, but because maybe it's not 100% pure with regard to tactical simulation, but so what? I mean, there are other rule sets for that. When I just want to get together with some friends and play a fun game, Bolt Action's there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we actually play Bolt Action quite a bit. It's not my favorite set of World War II rules, but you're right. It's easy to throw together a game because of the points based system, which is another thing that people rail about. I actually rail about it a little bit, but never mind that. but no, it's like you say, it's a fun game, and that's the thing that some of the quote unquote serious gamers kind of lose sight of, is that it is a game.
Having fun? They lose sight of having fun?
They lose sight of having fun. It's like, at the end of the day, you're a 50-year-old man playing with toy soldiers, so take a breath. It's okay.
Absolutely, which is why it's funny. People watch the stupid stuff that we and certainly I do on Little Wars, and it's like, how can I take myself that seriously when my hobby is playing with toy soldiers? It is what it is, and I don't think any of us who enjoy the hobby should have to apologize for it. It's fun, and it's certainly better hobby than going out to a strip club, I guess. At least my wife thinks that.
Yeah, well, she's probably right. It's also, well, I was going to say it's also cheaper, but that's not at all true.
Oh, no. No, it is not a cheap hobby.
Oh, my word.
I think a lot of it, and this actually came up with a recent guest we had, and also in a recent column in WSS magazine, speaking about them, comes up with gatekeepers, right? When you talk about inclusivity, getting other people in, and the type of games that you play. So clearly, Steve, like, as a gatekeeper, you're going to be like, hey, come on, let's be more welcoming, partly because that's what you guys are doing over at Little Wars. But some of these other people, maybe they feel more possession about what stuff's going on. So it's harder for someone to break into historicals. And I'll be the first one to say it. I came to historicals relatively late, and it's confusing as all get out, because there's too many manufacturers doing too many things, no overlap. There's no real entry or guided tour for any of it. And it's hard for people to do it. So a lot of those other kind of systems that are fantasy or sci-fi or whatever, I think they get that they need to operate a different way. So in that regard, it's kind of a little more appealing to either newcomers or younger people. And some people are just going to be more willing to track down that they need, a certain thing from one manufacturer, something from somewhere else. So if some of that mist can be cleared, you get rid of the fog of war. I think it makes it easier for just gamers to get into any type of game that they want.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I think really the best way for people to get into the hobby is if they can find a club or a group of people already have kind of a number of armies or preferred rule sets that they have set up, and they can welcome them in and kind of introduce them to the hobby and help them navigate all of that. I mean, I went through it. I only got into historical miniatures wargaming shortly before I found the folks here at the club. When, having moved to the central Pennsylvania area, I discovered that, wait, Lancaster is like ground zero for historical miniatures wargaming. Who the heck knew that? I certainly didn't. And it was overwhelming for me at first. I had no idea. And I didn't come from like a Warhammer background or anything like that. I came from the old Avalon Hill board games. And so I guess I didn't have that expectation that I was going to, okay, this is the army that I'm going to use. These are the figures that I have to use. This is the point system. So I was completely lost at sea about anything involving miniatures. And honestly, it was the guys at the club who kind of helped me get up and running. And now I have all sorts of different armies from all sorts of different periods and play all sorts of different rules and write some of my own. And it's you're right though. I mean, there has to be that some way of getting people to feel more comfortable jumping into the hobby, because it can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
I think that's where there's an important place for Little Wars and enterprises like that, because a lot of people, maybe they don't, here in America, I think it's hard for us because it's such a big country, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's harder to get to some of these things. So if you don't have that club or the organization or a con or game store near you that has this, you're relying more and more on the internet, right? So if you have something like Little Wars, you can kind of use that as your guide, as it were, to kind of take you through. And in some other places, everyone's just so much closer that maybe it's a little more accessible without it. But even so, I think still having something like Little Wars, or pick any of them, right? It just kind of helps you hold your hand through it. It makes it a little more palatable. And then you form that bond, right? You have that relationship with your audience there where they view you as one of them, and just that you have this as if you're all one big club.
Yeah, and we certainly try and be as accessible as possible. Now, we all have other jobs. This is not a full-time gig. We do not make, millions of dollars on it yet.
Yet.
But but we when we have the time, we try and be available, whether it's people contacting us, through the emails, littlewarstv at gmail.com, or through our Facebook page, via messaging, via comments on YouTube. We try and respond as much as we can, and certainly a lot of the comments that we've gotten have been, how can I find a group like yours, or what kind of miniatures are those, where do you get them, how do you do the terrain? I mean, that's one of the reasons we do the terrain tip videos, which we try and make short and sweet and as easy and simple as possible. And we want to build that community, and ideally I would love to find a way to kind of help wargamers connect, because we do live in a very, at least here in the US, in a large country where everybody's spread out, and you can go 100 miles and not find another historical wargamer, or you could live 1 mile away from a group of 12 that you don't even know about.
Never know it.
And how it is that we can go about doing that, I don't really know yet. Just to give you an example, in the Gettysburg video that we just released, we actually got a professional audiobook narrator and voiceover artist to do the narration on that video. He's a fan of the channel, had reached out to us to volunteer his services. His name's Nick Padell, and he lives out in Michigan. And one of the things he asked me was, hey, do you know of any groups out here around my way? Because I'd love to do more gaming. I'm like, well, no, I'll try and find out what I can, and I haven't been very successful. But there's that thirst out there to find groups with similar interests, and you got to think in any area you should be able to find a half dozen guys and maybe the occasional female who are interested in historical miniature wargaming. But where do you go for that? I don't know.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you would think it would be a very easy thing to do nowadays with all the various social media sites and whatnot. But if anything, that almost makes it harder because everything is so fragmented.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. I mean, you can go on, and certainly we've tried to, put the word out about Little Wars on Facebook and via various other social media sites, but there's a million different groups out there. And fine, join them all and then put a seeking opponent thing in every one of those groups. First of all, it becomes pretty annoying to everybody else in the group, and second of all, it takes you forever.
Yeah.
But again, I don't know that there's a better solution to that. That I'm open to ideas, because Little Wars would love to be a part of it, connecting gamers and growing the hobby. It's what we're about.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough thing, and I hate to suggest that the solution might be yet another social media platform, but something devoted strictly to historical wargaming. I know there are different phone apps out there. I don't think any of them are particularly popular or successful, but they basically are find an opponent sites.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know if it's a tough one. Yeah, I don't know. Facebook for gamers, I don't know. I don't know if that would ever take off, or if it would even solve the problem. You could end up with the same situation. So
yeah.
Well, and what do you do about people who won't go on social media or don't want to go on the internet? I mean, we talked about a certain age group and certain demographics, right? Not to disparage anyone, but people of a certain demographic tend to maybe be a little resistant to certain technology things. And so how do you reach those people, and how do you make it accessible for them to reach other people?
yeah,
that's a problem as well.
Yeah, it is. It's not as big of a problem, but to my surprise, short side trip. I was in the Navy, retired from the Navy. I was on submarines, and the boat I was on just had a 35-year or 30-year reunion. And there were guys there that I thought were dead, because I never saw them on Facebook or anywhere on the internet. And it's like, no, they're not dead. They never use it. They don't use email minimally, but no social media at all. So yeah, those people are definitely out there.
Yeah, and we look at them like they're some sort of dinosaurs, and yet all of us grew up in a time when none of this stuff existed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
True. You made mention of your Gettysburg game. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about it? Because
sure,
it was fascinating for me, for the stuff leading up to it.
Yeah, well, it was in I want to say maybe the beginning of this year, 2019, that we connected with the American Battlefield Trust, which is a charitable organization, for those of you who don't know, who go out there and try and save and preserve battlefields, historical battlefields. Primarily, you're looking at the American War of Independence and Civil War. And when they find threatened properties through development or whatever, try and raise the funds, purchase those properties, and in many cases donate it to the National Park Service or transfer it in some way to the National Park Service. And we hooked up with them because they had actually been looking for a while to figure out a way to get their followers, particularly on social media, but then other members as well, kind of more actively and interactively involved in what it is that they do. And Greg did all of the talking with them in the early stages, but from what he told me, it's like they had been thinking of how can we make a game out of some of this. Well, along comes Little Wars TV, and they thought, hey, you guys, you do a good job, which was nice to hear, and we'd love to work out something with you. And the natural thing for us was, of course, well, let's do something with Gettysburg. They had just completed a big campaign to purchase some land to add to the Gettysburg Military Park, and it's close by to where we are. And we came up with the idea, okay, well, let's do a game. Let's recreate all 3 days of Gettysburg on the tabletop, and then, hey, maybe we can use their social media outlets to let the audience actually make some command decisions at some critical junctures in the early part of the battle. And, one thing led to another, and we came up with 3 command decisions that American Battlefield Trust viewers could choose. It was 3 decisions for the Union and 3 decisions for the Confederacy. And then we as players, when we actually played the game, would end up having to follow whatever orders they came up with, which if you watch the video, which as of the time we're taping this only debuted like yesterday, if you watch the video, there were some interesting results that came from that. But for me, one of the real privileges was the chance to play out Gettysburg, the entire 3-day battle, on the battlefield itself in General Lee's headquarters. So, we're there in the place for at least part of the day on day 1 of the battle that General Lee was giving orders, receiving reports. We're standing in the same room, pushing around toy soldiers, yes, but kind of trying to recreate what happened there. And it was a really cool opportunity for those of us at the channel, the Trust, the guys from the Trust, the professional historians, that we were kind of in teams, the Wargamers versus the historians. They seem to have a great time, and it really has been received incredibly well, both from the Trust social media followers and from Little Warriors, as we call our subscribers. That video, since it's gone up yesterday, has just outperformed everything we've done thus far by a mile. And it's been a great kickoff for what we consider our second season.
That's awesome. I haven't, believe it or not, I haven't actually watched it yet. I was saving it for tomorrow. But when I saw that go up, I think I saw it on Twitter first, and I was like, that's got to be like the most awesome thing in the world. That's kind of something that I have had tickling in the back of my mind for a long time, but can't see it ever happening. But to run a game, I was thinking more along the lines of a participation game, right? Like set up in the visitors center. Mm-hmm. And if people wanted to jump in and run a turn or two, something like that. But yeah, I saw you guys were doing that, and I was like, wow, this is great. That's got to be awesome.
Yeah, it was. And we've actually thought of trying the kind of participation game as well. I mean, here in Harrisburg, which is where I'm based, Harrisburg, PA, we have the National Civil War Museum, and it would be a great venue to put up a game in there and kind of get people exposed to it as they come through there. You could do it down at the Naval Academy where, Tom and I were for our Guadalcanal episode. There's places all over the place. And for up in New England, obviously, you've got a lot of Revolutionary War sites where that would be fantastic.
Right. So, but I was going to ask what the result was, but I don't even want to know. I haven't watched it yet. I'll find out later.
Yes, you will. Yes, you will.
Oh, so what does Little Wars have lined up for this the coming season? I mean, is there any more extravaganzas like this? Can you tease anything?
Well, we're not going to have anything probably as big and cool as the Gettysburg battle. I mean, we've got some big stuff. We've already released a trailer for what will be our second episode of the season, which is D-Day, the beach landings in the north of France. And that was just an immense table. It's probably the biggest table that we have done because it covers all the beaches from D-Day using the rule set Rommel. by Sam Mustafa, and it was a tremendous fight. And Greg's hard at work editing that episode right now. Fortunately, that's not one that I had to string together. He takes all the really, really challenging stuff. I take the fun, easy stuff. But I think that's going to turn into a great episode. And then, also from our season 2 trailer, a lot of people were commenting on the flashing light effects that we have for our Age of Sail game. Well, we just actually filmed that episode this past weekend, and I can say that is the Battle of Trafalgar. So we're going big on that one. We had in 1200 scale, 60 ships out on the table. It was just absolutely fantastic looking, and it ended up being a terrific game too. So I'm really looking forward to getting that episode out there. And bigger and better is what we're trying to go for the rest of the season as well. I'm not going to give away all of our episodes for you here today, but there's our next couple.
All right, that's awesome. I assume like the big games like that, like the Trafalgar game, that's got to be a group project, painting and everything like that, painting and assembly.
Yeah, although Dieter, who was in a number of our episodes last year, has always been a big Age of Sail fan, and I think he had maybe 20 ships or something like that. And then we were fortunate enough to have one of our newer members, Miles, join the club, and he's an avid sailor. And in fact, his personal sailboat, he owns a sailboat, is called the Bucentaure, which was the flagship of Admiral Villeneuve at Trafalgar. Yeah. So no surprise, he's into the Age of Sail and the Napoleonic era, and since he's into that kind of gaming, he had all the other ships for us. So he's in the episode, and we couldn't have done it without him. But the ships just look absolutely gorgeous at that scale with that many of them. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. We have a group up here that's big into the rule set Trafalgar. But their stuff is just gorgeous. What do they call themselves, John? Admirals of the Napoleonic Broadside or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know how much that they've been doing lately.
I've seen them.
They've had some health issues, but
they have. I've seen some stuff pop up in my feed though, so I assume they're still at least semi-active. But yeah, the ships are just gorgeous. I've got a couple of the Langton models myself. Mine are not gorgeous, but they are very nice models. But let's see. Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was just, you mentioned about doing Trafalgar. What set of rules did you use for that?
For that one, we used Fire as She Bears by Starboard Tack Press. And that's been a rule set that our club has used as long as I've been here. And it, quite frankly, is my favorite rule set for bigger Age of Sail battles, because each player can control, squadrons or divisions of 3 or 4 ships. And you can handle three squadrons without much difficulty. And it moves fairly fast. I mean, it was a long day, playing out Trafalgar, but I just have found, and I've played it at conventions as well, it just seems to work well for big battles, and is very easy for newcomers to grasp. So it seemed like an ideal rule set to use. I have played Trafalgar as well. I enjoyed that too, but Fire She Bears is our go-to for the big stuff.
It feels like you guys try to blend a combination of both stuff that has enough meat in it for when you're playing these scenarios, but also stuff that isn't intimidating. Would you say that's a fair thing to say?
Well, I think we do that, and part of it is intentional. Again, understanding that we're trying to reach out to new audiences as well as cater to established wargamers, and part of it is because those tend to be the rule sets that we like. I mean, we like a little bit of meat, but we also don't like to be sitting there for an hour agonizing over one little move and calculating 37 different modifiers. There's a place for that, certainly, and I've got some board games that I love that I've played in the past and still break out every once in a while. But in a social setting with a bunch of other gamers, we're having fun bantering with each other. I mean, the stuff you see in our episodes is really the way that we are. And that's how we game, even when the camera isn't on. And it's tough to be that way when you're poring over rules and trying to calculate CRT results all the time. Yeah. So something that has a little bit of historical meat on it, but is also very playable. It's the sweet spot for us.
Yeah, it is. I'm finding as I grow older, I'm tending to more and more like the preferred games that way. I mean, I used to be, all I was interested in was like the really heavy duty, crunchy, detail oriented games. But a lot of the, how do I want to say it? Just because it's got
Carefully.
a lot of, just because it has a lot of detail, a lot of, like you say, combat modifiers, a lot of minutia involved with the rules, doesn't necessarily make it any better of a simulation of a particular conflict than a
Right.
somewhat more streamlined set of rules. And that's something I never really accepted in my youth, but as I've grown older, I've found it to be more and more true. I do still like a crunchy game. I mean, I got to be honest, my favorite board game is actually Advanced Squad Leader.
Mhm.
But yeah, for stuff that you're playing, like you say, in a social setting, simple and fast play goes a long way.
It does.
Yeah, I mean, for us in particular, John, I mean, like my particular area of interest that I really love is like the horse and musket era.
Mhm.
You know, Napoleonic Civil War, 7 Years' War to a lesser extent. But I'm pretty much the only one in our group that feels that way. So they're not going to sit down and play General de Brigade. They're just not going to. But Black Powder, you can get them to play.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And it goes back to the gateway point that Jonathan brought up earlier. You know, the easier you can get someone to slide into playing a game, the more likely they are to have a good time and be interested in doing it again. If they walk away from the first experience with a war game going, I have no idea what just happened or how anything happened, what incentive is there for them to try it again?
Right, exactly, none. So yeah. But
Well,
yeah, no, that was a bit of an eye opener for me anyway. But
I think you're making some headway though, Adrian. With we've become, partly because of Adrian, but we've become fans of ESR, and others in the group are kind of latching onto that and diving in with forces and building up stuff and just seem to be getting more intrigued by it. And I think it's because it's so different from Black Powder. I was surprised that anyone in our group would really be eager about it, but quite a few of them have actually they're going full force.
yeah, they have actually. That's a good thing. I am a bit of an evangelist. I've always had that about me.
I thought you were very I'm not going to say it. I was going to say something, but I'll get hate mail for it. No, you're right. You just have the podium with you all the time.
Yes, absolutely.
Very Sam Adams.
But well, I mean, that particular set of rules is just that's not a set that I would call particularly crunchy necessarily. In fact, in a lot of ways, it's very abstract, but it's also very different. That's how it caught my attention. But anyway, that's.
Well, I mean, Dave, who, you know, with the Wargaming Company and deals with ESR, I mean, he's got some real interesting ideas about what he wants to do, and his approach to getting wargaming out there to a wider audience. Cold Wars, you know, we talked with him quite a bit. We looked to hook up with him again at Historicon, and I wish him the best of success, because he's kind of from the manufacturer's angle, he's trying to do the same type of thing that we're trying to do through YouTube, that you guys are trying to do through the podcast, which is get this out to a wider audience and make it more accessible.
Yep.
I know he has
So,
a lot of interesting things planned coming forward. And I mean, I only know tidbits of things that even if I said what they were, they'd mean nothing to anyone. But just the fact that his mind is constantly working and the way it works is really intriguing to me. You can tell that there's a lot going on there, and it's a wonder he ever sleeps.
Yeah, I think you're right. He may not, but no, I think we need more people like him who are willing to take a fresh look at different ways that we can approach marketing this hobby, not just from a business perspective for him, but just to grow the hobby, because we all love it. That's why we spend our free time doing this stuff, and we don't want to see it wither on the vine.
Yep.
Well, I think you hit a point there. There's a combination, I think, between passion and authenticity. And I think people can really tell when you're evangelizing. Are you just there shilling for it because someone says you should, or you're bored or whatever? Or do you really mean it? Like, do you feel it deep down, that fire in your gut?
Right. No, I think that's an excellent point. And I know from my interactions with Dave, he's got that fire. Absolutely.
Yeah, he does.
Oh my word! Yeah, I was hoping to meet up with him at Historicon this year, and I was hoping to catch you guys too. But unfortunately, now I'm not going to be able to make it. So
that's
because
unfortunate.
you're a loser.
I know everybody. Well, yeah, yes, but it's not my fault.
She's never going to hear it.
Well, you'll have to check out our recap video. We'll absolutely do it. We need to
Yeah.
feature the brand new venue where it's going to be. Obviously, we've done some videos on that on the channel already to give people a little taste of what we think it's going to be like, what it looks like. HMGS was great about getting us access to tour the facility early on, and I'm really excited about it. I mean, we got some comments on that video when we posted. It's like, oh, well, how much is HMGS paying you? Nothing. We really did like it that much. I mean, it's a much better venue than the host. We'll just put it.
Oh my God, yeah. The host was horrible. Yeah, the convention center there. I've been there before. I was actually there in 2018 because I thought that's where Historicon was, but it was not there in 2018.
Not yet. You were ahead of the news cycle.
But no, it is. It's a beautiful facility. So much better. Downtown Lancaster is pretty nice. There's a lot of restaurant, all the usual type tourist stuff around there. It's a much better spot. I think people are going to be happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, by the time I think this episode airs, we might be pretty close to having our recap video up. So, because I think this is going to air after Historicon, so you can check that out and see what it was like and see what you missed, and look forward to next year, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Adrian, I think we have a solution here for you. So
what's that?
You're gonna think it's dumb, but I don't care. You're familiar with Flat Stanley? I think we need to have a Flat Adrian and just like ship you there and get. Hey, Steve, would you guys put him at Flat Adrian in a video when you're down there?
Absolutely. If you get Flat Adrian here, we will put him in a video.
There we go. See, you'll be.
I can guarantee you that.
I knew the sigh was coming. That's how I know it's a great idea.
All right. Well, we'll see if we can get a Flat Adrian put together and mailed out, I guess.
You can do it. I have faith in you. This will be a new thing, Flat Adrian. Bring him to your local gaming convention. Send a picture. Maybe we'll give people a prize. I don't know.
It'll turn into a thing. That's how we'll find out where all the gaming clubs are across this country. They will all be clamoring to have a visit from Flat Adrian. We'll get their addresses and we can connect everybody. See, we've solved the problem, guys.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Wow. See, all it takes is open communication, and now a serious and difficult problem is resolved. All right.
Who knew?
Yeah, who knew it was that simple? All right.
All you got to do is talk to one another, respect people, and work together.
Absolutely.
Oh my God.
And then have Flat Adrian there as well.
I can't wait to see the comments on this episode.
Oh, and just think, we could raise money for charity, right? By selling different clothing for Flat Adrian. It could be branded with your local gaming club, whatever. So that way you can have 20 cents an article of clothing goes to, I don't know, pick a charity people like. And there you go.
Flat Adrian swag.
Wow.
Get some bling too. I mean, this is.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Cool glasses. And then you need accessories, right? So you need like ammo and guns, and you need different uniforms. Humvees.
If Flat Adrian makes it to Historicon, then I'm going to invite every passerby to accessorize Flat Adrian. That's what I'm going to do.
Oh, we got to do it.
All right. Yeah, I think at this point it pretty much has to happen. All right.
See, there's a reason why I'm here. It's because I'm the idea guy.
That's my line. That's my line for Little Wars. I'm the idea guy, and then I just make Greg do the work.
I love it.
Yeah.
It works out really well.
You and I are the same.
Yeah, it's got to be nice for you guys to have somebody like that, because John will come up with something, and then it's like Adrian spends the next 4 months painting because he's the only one who paints.
Well, you're so talented at it. When it's your own fault for being that good. So really, if you were just crappy, then you wouldn't have a problem.
Yeah, I guess.
Honestly, I mean, the funny part is, when people ask, how do you make a club successful? And actually, I think we've just touched on part of that, which is, you have to have a group of people who all maybe have different interests or different skills that they bring to the table.
Yeah.
You're going to want some that are willing to run games on a regular basis. You're going to want some who just enjoy painting, and so they're going to create all the different armies if you want to game different periods. Some people that are willing to, clean up the club every once in a while. It takes a wide variety of people coming together to make a club work, and I think we've seen some of that on display here.
Yeah, definitely. It is impressive to have a club going on that long. 20. I mean, not just a wargaming club, any kind of a club, because it's tough to keep up that level of enthusiasm as people rotate in and out. So
we definitely cultivate a particular culture in our club, and we're not shy when someone comes in. We're pretty open about allowing people to come in and start gaming with us, but then we're also not shy about telling them we don't want you back anymore.
Yeah.
Because those of us who have been with the club for a while, we realize we've got a good thing going. It's a good group of friends. We have a fantastic place to game, and it's too good to let, you know, someone who doesn't quite fit ruin it. And you know, it's not to be mean, and it's not that the people aren't good people, but you've all experienced it, and I'm sure a ton of the listeners out there have experienced it. There can be perfectly good people that you like in all aspects of life other than when you're at the tabletop with them gaming.
Yes.
And one person that just kind of rubs people the wrong way can really ruin what is a good thing. And you know, you gotta be willing to pull out the executioner's sword every once in a while.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Adrian.
Yeah, that's got to be kind of a crummy thing to have to do. But you're absolutely right. I mean, and it's like, and there's nothing wrong with that, because, like you say, it's like you've got a successful club, a successful group, and yeah, why should you let like one guy kind of spoil it, or worse, try to change the culture if people aren't on board with that? So
Yeah, that's worse.
And
yeah.
that is where it's nice for us to have something like the private building that we're in now, because we can lock the doors.
Yeah, and that's awesome. It's harder to pull the trigger on somebody if your club is the friendly local game store.
Yes,
It's
yes,
like,
it is.
because they're still going to be there every week. So that's why I'm still hooked up with John.
Well, I was going to say Adrian's too shy. What he really wants to know is he's going to be moving to your area in the not too distant future, and he wants to know if he can join and play with you guys.
You can come in for a
Can he be your
probationary
friend?
period. Probationary period. That's what we'll have. We'll offer you a chance to prove your mettle.
Is there like a T-shirt that says Proby on it? Does he have to wear that around? And
No, it should be. Maybe we'll just like have a special hat for that. We're
oh,
big
I
into
like that.
hats. We're very big into hats in our club.
All right. Well, I accept that. Yeah, I was saving that for off air, but yeah, I actually am going to be moving down.
Well, you were
to
beating around the
Pennsylvania.
bush. It's like I know what he's doing. I've known you long enough. Just go with it.
Oh, well, no, absolutely. Connect with us when you get down here. I mean,
will-
and I don't know exactly where you're going to be, obviously, but I mean, we have folks who drive to the club from, in some cases, I think 2.5 hours away. We have one guy that comes maybe once a month or once every other month from 2.5. Greg actually lives an hour and a half from the club. I'm 45 minutes. The number of people within a half an hour is actually pretty small.
Yeah.
My goodness.
I'll be when we do get down there, I'll be right outside Valley Forge. So
Okay. You'd probably be driving about as far as Greg does then.
yeah, if you guys were, I think you are, yeah, about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. Yeah. So, but anyway, thanks for mucking that all up, John. Like I said, I was saving that for off air, but now everybody knows. So.
Hashtag worth it.
What was that you said earlier about editing software?
We'll leave it in.
Just make it look seamless.
Yeah. So what else? There was you had mentioned a collaboration. I just want to kind of steer it back to gaming.
Sure.
Oh, is that what we're supposed to talk about?
About with Wargame Soldiers and strategy and
Right.
crunching their data. What are you? Well, I guess I shouldn't say what are you hoping to find, but what are you hoping to find? What?
Well, I mean, so many people, and we've talked about it already a little bit here, have just kind of assumptions about what the state of the hobby is. And, what we have in the WSS poll, which they've been doing for a number of years now, and they turned over 5 years of data to us, all anonymized, so we don't know who answered what, but we have the aggregate results, is a really cool window into people's attitudes about the hobby. We've already done a video on how much they spend on average on the hobby, and what it is they like about the hobby, what it is they don't like about the hobby, and demographics. And so it really has been interesting to the extent that it confirms some of the things that I think a lot of us sense. The graying of the hobby, whether the numbers are going down. It confirms some of that, not as dramatically as I think some people would expect, but then also just offers little nuggets of information as to, things like I said, how much do people spend on average? Your average person, we discovered, spends about $1,000 a year on the hobby of wargaming, what it is they like about it. This I thought was pretty interesting. I mean, what is it that makes historical wargaming different than board gaming? It's the three-dimensional aspect of it, right? It's the miniatures, but then also if you're going to set up a good battlefield, you need to have the terrain. And I think anybody who's been to any of the big conventions or even some of the regional conventions like Barrage or Huzzah has seen some fantastic looking tables that obviously people have spent time and effort and money to make those tables look as good as they do. But when you look at what it is that people really like about the hobby and what they don't like about the hobby, well, 3/4 of the folks say that they enjoy most it's actually 73% of them enjoy collecting miniatures. 72% enjoy hanging out with friends. 2/3 of the people say the most important thing to them is enjoying the playing of the game itself. But then only about 29% of people actually say that they really enjoy making terrain or putting a table together. So here, to me, it's one of the keys that makes historical miniatures wargaming is the terrain, and yet 2/3 of the people out there really don't like doing it. So it's just interesting little nuggets like that.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, I got to admit, I'm not a terrain maker. Well, for one thing, I don't really have the space to do it right, and I also don't have the talent to do it. So, although I've been learning some stuff from Little Wars TV, I made some very nice pine trees and rivers thanks to you guys.
Excellent, so. excellent. Well, Keith comes up with a lot of that stuff. I think it was Greg who came up with the rivers, but we have our pinned trees, which Keith didn't come up with that idea, but he certainly evangelized that to all of us in the club. We joke around with Keith that he isn't so much into wargaming as he's into terraining. We've had many fun times over the years taking a table that he has made absolutely perfect and then messing it up when he goes to the restroom or something, just to see his reaction when he came back, which isn't always pretty.
He's a very my kind of people.
He's a very angry man.
Rightly so, apparently.
Well, you're doing an enhancement, right? Isn't that what they call it when you get a new computer software upgrade and then it just mucks everything up, but it enhances it?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. That's funny. Yeah, it's almost like every wargaming group needs somebody who is actually a model railroad guy, because I've never known a model railroader who wasn't a fanatic about building terrain. You pretty much have to be, to do that hobby right. Yeah. So yeah.
And I mean, I'll say, something that I've been delving into and have certainly shared it with the audience at Little Wars that I think has revolutionized my approach to terrain is 3D printing. I picked up a 3D printer last September, a second one then last November, and I'm just churning stuff out, and it's actually really broadened the time periods, genres and even scales to a certain extent that I've exposed myself to in the past, and what I'm interested in now, because there's great terrain out there and I can print it up with actually very little effort. I love painting terrain. I don't like building it so much, so it's kind of the sweet spot for me.
Yeah. That's perfect. No, 3D printing is like you say, revolutionary. I actually bought it was a bad choice, but I just wanted to experiment and play around one of the micro 3D printers. Mm-hmm. But yeah, as soon as we move and I have more space, that's probably the first thing I'm going to acquire is an actual decent sized printer to start really working with seriously. Because yeah, you're right. There's so much stuff out there for sale and for free in terms of patterns and design. It's like literally anything you want.
Yeah, it's been fantastic, and I've had a ton of fun with it. And we're actually, I won't tell you exactly what the episode is, but we're going to have an episode this season. It's a 28mm episode where basically the entire table is just going to be covered with 3D printed buildings. So see if you can figure out which one that is when it airs.
I will do so. Yeah, that's awesome though. Good. Yeah, and it's after you get past the initial expense of the printer, I mean, I suppose you could say you're almost saving money. Almost.
It depends on how much terrain you print up. I mean, it's
the filament's not cheap. That's true.
It's not that bad, but yeah, I mean, there's a cost to running it, and obviously the cost to jump in. Although that is getting a lot lower for some of the more entry level machines.
Yeah. So, but you guys did a couple of videos, at least 2 videos I know on the 3D printing thing. Those were interesting. I like watching those.
Yeah, I actually did 4 of them. Just
Oh, okay.
uploaded the 4th and final one. It was a series to help people who really are new to 3D printing as historical wargamers to kind of jump in and understand some of the terminology, what to look for, what's out there, what's available. I'm certainly no expert, but I'm basically sharing the knowledge that I gleaned over the first 6 to 8 months of owning my printers, to just trying to again be that welcoming gatekeeper who says, "Hey, come on in. It's cool. Try a free spool filament sample first, and then we'll have you hooked because you just printed out a 28 millimeter Sherman tank, and wow, that was cool." You know, it's easy to get hooked, and I think we're now up to 3 club members have 3D printers now, all
Oh,
of which will
wow.
be churning out stuff for the episode later this season.
Awesome. That's great.
That's a lot of printers.
It is.
Yeah, and I think between the 3 of us, we actually have 5 printers.
Yeah.
So, it's like once you see what these things are capable of, and you see more of them at the conventions as well. I know when I was at the Cold Wars convention this past spring, I was able to identify, because I knew what to look for, the large amount of 3D printed, particularly vehicles and terrain that were making their way to the table, and
Yeah.
they look just fantastic. Because once you get these things painted up, it's really hard to tell. Everyone talks about the layers, and you can see the layers. Well, you can if you look really
Can.
close, but if you're at arm's distance, it's no different than a paint job.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
Wargamer quality, isn't that the phrase?
It is. Yeah, no, they are really nice. We were at a small local convention here. I actually bought 3 3D printed pieces that, yeah, they're as good a quality as any resin or plastic kit, really. I would say it was 2 tanks and an artillery piece. And yeah, you're right. If you get close and look at them, you can see the layer lines, no doubt about it. But by the time you have it painted and weathered, it's not significant. It's not an issue, not in my opinion, anyway.
No, and I think it's going to revolutionize the wargaming hobby in the years to come. I mean, they've been out for a while, obviously, but they're getting to that point, that price point, where they're cheap enough and easy enough to use, even for an absolute beginner like I was. That it's not going to be long until they're showing up in a lot of different households, and wargamers start using it for their hobby.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're going to see a lot of war gamers taking evening classes at the local community college in 3D modeling, I think. So, so what? So we talked a little bit about the club. If somebody wanted to start a club, what are your top 5 pieces of advice for somebody wanting to start a wargaming club?
Well, I'm going to keep pitching any video that we've produced that's anything along those lines. We do have a top 10 pieces of advice for people trying to start a club, although actually we did a bonus 11th, which was ultimately my favorite, which was invite the homeless. But in all seriousness, I think the first one is you should be meeting. If you're going to try and start a club, meet in a public space.
Yeah.
We're all familiar with the back of the gaming store or the comic book store or something like that. That you've got to be visible.
Yeah.
You've got to be visible. Tip number 2 would be, meet there at a regular time, a scheduled time. If you can get a store owner or whoever's managing the store to agree to give you a space on a regular night of the week, every week or every other week, and then allow you to hang something up in the store about it, particularly if it's a store that sells miniatures, then people are going to gradually become aware of you. Find out where your gaming groups are, even if they're not historical based. Sometimes if you can find that there's a 40K group that games on the second Saturday of every month at your local gaming store, if there's space, set up a table at the same time. First of all, you might get some of them interested, and second of all, other people who are just wandering into the back to see what all these games are. They might not be interested in the 40K, but they might be interested in what you're running.
Right.
Find, as you begin to get people involved in the club, make sure that you have a shared vision for what you want the club to be. We talked earlier about the way that our club is and the level of density that we like in our rules. Well, you want to try find people who have similar interests. And you know, if there are some that are really more into the grognard hardcore war games, well, you know, maybe they run games if it gets big enough on one table while you run games on another. You know, try and have a vision for what you want the club to be. Do you want to be full of rules lawyers? I can't imagine why you would be, but you know, if that's how you are and that's what you want to be surrounded by, well, maybe it's not a good idea to let in people like me. But you know, it's the old line, you know, I wouldn't want to be a member of a club that would have me anyway.
Right.
But I mean, I think those are my top tips. And again, we have an entire video that goes into some other ones as well.
All right, awesome. Yeah, the having a regular schedule is definitely an important thing to anything that you're kind of trying to organize. And actually, I would have to say, John, that's one of the problems we have, even with our, you know, non-club gaming group, is we're pretty erratic on when or even if we're going to end up meeting. Unfortunately, schedules being what they are. So.
Oh yeah, and I think any club that's starting out, if it's really relying on 2 or 3 key members and those 2 or 3 members aren't available, it's going to be hard. We're fortunate we have a pretty big group. You know, you only see maybe a half dozen to a dozen of us on camera. That's going to change a little bit in the second season where we're bringing some more of our regular club members into it. But we have a pretty big group. We do, and on any given week there can be 2 or 3 games running, or there can be 1 game running, but even then, even with the size group that we do have some weeks where it's just like nobody's able to make it out.
Yeah, well, that's going to happen when real life intrudes with stuff like that. But even so, a regular schedule is that's important to any ongoing organized event, obviously. But that's good. I would say we've got we've probably only got 4, I would say, regular players in our group. Maybe 5. 4.
4.
So yeah, it's I don't think we're ready to start a club just yet.
Yeah. Well, you got to grow a little bit. And again, you know, keep it in a public place. That I think is also very important, because you don't want to be in a position of explaining to law enforcement officers why you were going up to people going, do you want to come into my basement and see my toy soldiers?
Right. Yeah. No. Oh my God.
Maybe they want to join in. Who knows?
Yeah. The cops roll up and there's two more members. Wow.
There you go.
Although it's a funny story, actually. It was where our club is located is in a downtown area, which is actually fairly high crime for this area, this part of the country. In fact, we joke, we meet on Monday nights, that it's not an official Monday night gaming session until there's been a police siren outside. And we were gaming one night in the summer, and it was either an ACW or a Napoleonics game we had spread out on the table. And because it was a warm summer evening, kind of had the front door half open, letting the air come in. And all of a sudden, a police officer walks in the door. And just kind of looks around, and you've seen in the videos what our club looks like. I mean, it's got all sorts of replica weapons hanging everywhere.
Yeah.
And so there's the group of us with a bunch of toy soldiers and a bunch of weapons hanging on the wall, and a police officer standing in the door. And he was there to ask us if we had heard anything going on in the parking lot, because there was like a knife point robbery or something. But I could just see him looking around, and then his partner comes in right after him, and the two of them are just looking around. They're asking us questions about the parking lot, but they're obviously very interested in what the club looks like. And they didn't ask any questions about that, though. They left, and I just turned to everyone else, and I'm like, they're going to swear out a search warrant right now, and they're going to be back in about an hour. But I was wrong; they didn't show back up. But it's I do wonder every once in a while just what was going through their mind. What the heck is this?
Yeah, trying to look at it from their perspective and stuff. It's like, here's a bunch of older guys playing with kids' toys with rifles and swords and stuff on the wall. Let's just roll on out of here.
Yeah, completely normal. Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here.
Yeah. Over the course of the entire day, this, to be honest, probably didn't even register as abnormal.
Well, as I am somewhat involved in law enforcement, I know the type of things that they can see in a normal day, and I mean, not nearly as disturbing in the traditional way, at any rate.
Yeah. Well, the good news is, though, you're located in Pennsylvania, so the weapons will be less of a problem than, say, if the police up here walked in on a similar scene, shall we say?
True.
That is right. That is right. Yeah, a little bit more open to gun ownership here than I think in some other parts of the country.
Yeah, somewhat. Oh, that is funny though. But all right.
Great. What else do you guys have going on? You have season 2 happening. WSNS, you're working with their survey. Any other cool stuff that you can share with us?
Well, we're right now we are heavily involved in season 2. It has obviously started. We talked about Gettysburg. That was episode 1. D-Day coming up will be episode 2. We are still in production on season 2, and will be for the next couple of months, and that'll roll out up pretty much until the end of the year. The WSS thing is going to continue to be going on. They're going to have the new survey coming out, I think, at the end of July. So you go to the WSS survey blog, and they'll have information about that. We'll be sharing information there. I know Greg has, had a long gestating series addressing some of the things that we've talked about here. The future of the hobby, and what various people think can be done to ensure that future, help for growth in the future beyond what it is you're doing, what it is we're doing, or any of the manufacturers that we've talked about. So he's been toiling away at that, and I think that's going to be absolutely fascinating. Don't have a release date on that, but I think that's something to definitely look forward to. But that's really what we're chugging away on now. We do hope to do more with the Trust in the future, given the success of the Gettysburg episode. So if we end up doing some AWI stuff, who knows? We may be up your way. But so and we're open to ideas too. We like what we're doing, and people like what we're doing, but we're always looking for ways to do more. There should be some news about one other thing, which I'm going to keep secret, but within the next month or two, there should be some news as well that I think people find a little cool, and which is branching out from what we've been doing thus far.
Awesome. All right. Oh, I know one other thing I wanted to ask about, and we can go as deep into this or as shallow as you want to, but that is rules authorship. I know at least a couple of you guys are involved in writing or revising sets of war games rules. Mm-hmm. One of the things that initially drew me was Altar of Freedom, as a matter of fact. Mm-hmm. So any more of that kind of cooking or in the works?
Oh, well, there always is. I mean, we're always kind of, a variety of us, myself included, are always kind of tinkering on different rule sets. And the Age of Hannibal rule set that we released a few months back and has been very well received. It's actually built on the Chipco system, which the club had played for a long time before I arrived, and then I was exposed to for the first time after I arrived. And that was a product of tinkering over the years, primarily by Greg and Chow. Chow and Keith, of course, were Iron Ivan, the Disposable Heroes rule sets. They were Iron Ivan until they sold out to Brigade Games. Keith still does work on things like DH2 for Brigade. And then Greg, had for a long time been trying to come up with a rule set for the Civil War, an era of particular interest to him that would allow you to play the grand tactical battles, and as a result we got Altar of Freedom. And I, for myself, am a big fan, if you could remember back the Kawanakajima episode that we did of medieval Japanese warfare. I'm a huge fan of that period. I love it, and yet I've never really found a rule set that satisfied everything that I wanted. There are some good ones out there. Battles in the Age of War by Peter Pigg is actually probably my favorite, but even that has its imperfections. And I love the Altar of Freedom rule set so much that I've taken a lot of the core mechanics, and I'm working on my own kind of version of that, but set for medieval Japanese warfare, the age of the country at war. And the game I'm running at Historicon for me, and next week, and for the listeners, I ran it, so it might have already been a disaster. We'll find out. At Historicon, I'm actually running the Kawanakajima scenario, but with my kind of beta test rules modifying Altar of Freedom. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh yeah, that'll be exciting to see. Yeah. No, Altar of Freedom is yeah, I'm looking forward. I've still got some painting to do because I had no 6mm armies at all, so I had to start everything from scratch.
Now you've found God's one true scale, though, so all will be well with the world.
I have, though, and you're right. It's kind of funny. The first miniatures games I ever played, of course, were Micro Armor with GHQ's rules many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So my first miniatures figures that I ever had were 6mm, 1/285th scale, and so I had a bunch of infantry, a bunch of tanks. When I went into the Navy, I gave it all away to my friends that I gamed with, and that was the last I ever saw of it. That was a dumb mistake. But yeah, after I got back and got back into gaming, I kind of poo-pooed the smaller scales, and it was all 28mm stuff, 28mm. But yeah, I had a revelation like six months or so back, and I was like, you know what? I could put a lot more figures on the table, and I could do it a lot cheaper and a lot faster if I were painting these tiny little figures where I didn't have to paint every button and pocket seam. So
yeah, well, I will tell you, for one of our episodes this season, I painted all right. In total, I've painted about 2,500 6mm figures, and did a crash painting job on about 1,000 of them for this particular episode. And I just think it looks so great for mass troops. I mean, 28mm, I love 28mm for the smaller skirmish level stuff.
yeah,
I think it's perfect for that. But if you're going to do a mass battle where you're going to have gigantic units that represent hundreds, if not thousands of men, it just looks better in 6mm, to me anyway. I know there are a lot of people who disagree, but for me and a lot of other people in the club and at Little Wars, obviously we do a number of our episodes are in 6mm because we think it looks great. You know, the ACW stuff, the ancient warfare stuff, it all just looks great to me, and that's why we do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm finding that out all over again, kind of a thing. It's, you know, and people say that, you know, there's not as much detail, the figures don't look as good, and that's absolutely true if you look at an individual figure. But that's not the point. When you mass them all together, that's where the magic happens. So
absolutely, you know, you put 6mm samurai on one base, and you know, look at it from 4 feet away or 3 feet away, and then you put a whole bunch of those together. Yeah. That looks every bit as impressive, if not more so, for the big battle stuff than a beautifully painted 28mm samurai. I've got both. I mean, I love playing Ronin. That's a rule set that I love. I'm not going to play that in 6mm, for God's sakes. You know, that's probably better suited to 28 or even 54. And then I can paint the little designs on the Samurai Warriors leggings. I've done that. You know, but I'm not going to do that at 6mm.
No. I mean, if you can, good for you. But
well, if you can, you're insane. That's.
Oh my word! All right, that's awesome. Yeah, no, that's something I've always tinkered with in the back of my mind. I mean, for me, it's always kind of been World War II skirmish rules. It's like you look around, and it's like there's a lot of good rule sets out there. I would say Chain of Command is probably my current favorite, but none of them are perfect. So eventually, that's something I would like to do. I don't know that I ever will, but. Yeah, writing your own rules, that's got to be tickling in the back of every wargamer's mind.
Every wargamer does it at some point. I mean, I remember playing in a game at one of the HMGS conventions. I knew from the preliminary events list that it was going to be homebrew rules. I didn't know that when I showed up, the homebrew rules were going to be written out on a napkin and handed to me. But you know, the GM there, they wrote his own rules, and the game was about what you would expect for having the rules written on a napkin. It wasn't the best one I've ever played, but hey, you know, he wrote his own rules.
He wrote his own rules. Hey, good for him. Ugh. Yeah, running the game at a Historicon, boy, that's never been quite brave enough to do that. I don't feel like I'm worthy, I guess.
The players make it. I mean, if you get good players, it can be an absolute joy. If you don't get good players, it can be an absolute nightmare. I've been fairly fortunate, knock on wood. I will be again this time. But it can be a lot of fun. If you're running a game and people are having fun, it's great.
Yeah.
And Little Wars, we are running a bunch of games, a whole slate of games at Historicon, and we hope to be able to do that at virtually every convention. It gets a little more difficult for me in the fall and the spring because I've got a daughter who plays hockey, so I'm traveling all over the place with her, including up to your neck of the woods on a alarmingly regular basis, given where I live. But
that's unusual.
What, traveling up to New England? Not at all.
I don't recommend it if you don't have to.
No, well, I mean, I almost made it to Huzzah this year because she had an event in Bedford that same weekend.
Oh,
But then the
wow.
way that her game shook out, I wasn't going to be able to make the hour and a half or 2 hour drive that I thought it was going to be to get up to where it was being held.
Oh, that's too bad. That would have been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'd love to get there. Ever since visiting the Hawks and Barrage, their regional convention last year, I'd like to visit more. I really would, because it's a totally different experience than you get at the big HMGS conventions.
Yeah.
And it's different. It's not better. It's not worse. It's just different. And I had a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my goal once things shake out here in the following year, is to spend more time at various cons, because I don't get to do enough of that. It's like there's always something else going on, or whatever, and it's like I'm done with it. I'm going to wargaming conventions, and you people are going to have to accept that. So I just
I identify as a wargamer. Accept me.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, why can't people just let me be me? But oh my word! But yeah,
I think that's the T-shirt we're going to put on Flat Adrian. Let me be me.
Oh my God, Flat Adrian! How am I? I guess that's going to be a FedEx overnight. I don't see how else it's going to get there in time. Okay.
Man, that's gonna be so good.
I can't believe that's even going to be a thing.
Oh, it will. And
I was so looking forward to this episode, and now I'm sorry it happened.
We at Little Wars TV are excellent at causing people to have all sorts of different kinds of regrets. How did I get involved with this thing? Why did we let them film here? All of these questions have been asked of us.
Adrian, we're so lucky because we know so many graphic designers, and I'm just thinking which one I want to ask to make Flat Adrian and how quickly they can get it. I know who I'm going to ask.
Well, I'll tell you what, none of them are going to have it done in time if it's going to be a Historicon.
Oh, you want to bet?
No.
I know exactly who I'm going to ask, and I'm pretty sure they'll get it done in no time flat.
All right. Well, we can talk about it. We can talk about it later. But if you can do it, that'll be fine.
Flat Adrian. Steve, you mentioned several times about the importance of getting new ideas and having kind of a community give and take, or feedback and interaction with one's audience, and how you guys try to spend as much time as you can, obviously within constraints, whether it's through social media or whatever, to interact with your audience. And we do the same here. And actually, Adrian, you shared recently, like a lot of wargamers, I guess, we're all abuzz about the contrast paints.
Oh, yeah.
That Games Workshop has put out. And so, Adrian, you painted a Blood and Plunder pirate, right?
Yes.
That you shared. And we had a little bit of feedback from one of our apparently longtime listeners, who I want to address him directly, because I got a great laugh out of it. So this listener, David, was complimenting about your paint job, and you, interestingly enough, you came to my defense saying that I'm actually painting stuff right now. And
well, yeah, you know, it's such an unusual event. The world needs to know about it. That's why I felt the need to point it out.
It is unusual. But the interesting thing is, David wants me to paint during podcasts so that I can paint all my future armies during podcasts. And I just wanted noted that bare minutes before we started recording tonight, I was painting my Breachstorm stuff. And
Okay.
I kept on saying, hey, Amazon device, which I'm not going to say the name because it'll turn on now. What time is it? How much time do I have? And going back and forth between the table and getting the gear set up. One more coat.
Yeah, you've been.
That's how it is. We've all lost hours to that, right?
Oh, totally.
Well, I can get one more figure done or one more base done, and then I look up, it's 12 bases later, and it's also about 3 hours later. We've all been there.
True.
Yep.
1 o'clock comes very quickly.
Yeah, for me, it's usually a couple of days before the convention game is when I'm doing that.
Oh, it's a tremendous motivator.
Yeah, deadline is the most powerful thing in the world.
It really is.
So,
if people want to keep up to date with all the stuff you're doing, both within Little Wars and all of your own projects and rules designing and everything, how can they do that, Steve?
Well, probably the The best way would be to sign up or enlist. That's the term we used at littlewarstv.com. You can. It's basically free membership to our little club. You give us your email address, and you'll have access to free stuff that we do, like the scenarios that we do in each of our episodes. But it's also a way for us to communicate with you and let you know that things are happening. We try not to inundate people with too much stuff. If you don't want to do that, then obviously you can find us on YouTube. That is obviously the biggest thing for us. Subscribe. You'll find out whenever one of our newest videos pops on Little Wars TV. That's all we are, at Little Wars TV. Also, we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Look for Little Wars TV. You can find us in all of those outlets. We try and cross post on a regular basis. So if you're only on one channel and not the others, you'll still find out the information. And if you do make it to the conventions and you see any of us walking around with Little Wars TV stuff, don't be afraid to come up and say hello. We love to hear what you like. I love to hear what you don't like about Greg, and actually it's more Keith. I like to hear what you don't like about Keith. Connect with us that way. We try and be open. So if you have a question and you can't find an answer to it in any of those other things that I mentioned, just reach out to us, and we will try and get back to you with it. And any developments that we have coming up in the months to come, don't worry, we will not be shy. We will share them with you. We are not shy. I think that should be clear by now.
Yeah, watching the videos, you don't look at the videos and say, "Man, these are a bunch of introverts here."
Well, it's funny, personality type. Actually, I'm very high on the introvert scale, but it's kind of different, I guess, when I'm around people that I know and the camera just doesn't bother me. I don't think about the fact that I'm acting like a complete moron in front of tens of thousands of people around the world.
Yeah.
Adrian, how can people stay up to date with all the stuff that you have going on?
All the usual ways. The two Facebook sites for Wargaming Recon, and then the Podcast Insiders site, and also on Twitter somewhat.
You mean at abenson229?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's it. I don't tweet enough to make it worthwhile, but if people want to catch me on Twitter or tweet something at me, feel free. Yeah, go ahead.
You're quite the salesman there, Adrian. I don't tweet anything worthwhile, but this is where you can find me. Oh, that's a great pitch. I like that. Can I use it?
Yeah. Go ahead and see how it works for you. Let me know. I mean, it's
So I love our last episode. Warlord sends us the 2nd edition Black Powder rules to cover on the show, and we get the episode going, and I'm like, "So, Adrian, what do you think about it?" And not even 3 minutes later, he's like, "Okay." And I said, "All right, we're done then. Never mind the rest of the episode."
Well,
we got an hour to do, bud. I mean, it's funny, but okay, we'll just wrap it up and call it an early night. I'll go paint some minis, I guess.
Well, you asked me what I thought of them. That's what I thought of them. They're great, and people should buy them.
See?
Well, there you go. It gives a nice counterpoint, because I mean, we haven't reviewed 2nd edition yet, because we're not big enough for Warlord to send us stuff like that. We did review 1st edition, which actually is a rule set that I like. I really like Black Powder. There are probably about half of our club likes Black Powder, but for whatever reason, we ended up with 2 of the guys in our club who don't like it reviewing it. So I think a lot of, we got a lot of comments about the negativity in that review, which, it's unfortunate, because I like the rule set. And if you go to the website, we have other members, their ratings for it beyond just the 2 that are in the videos. And you'll see that there is a wide variety of opinions on that rule set, as there is for virtually every rule set that we review, because everybody's different. Everybody looks for something different, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. True. That's why there's more than one set of rules. Yeah, I watched that episode because I was like, "Oh, these guys reviewing Black Powder. That's great." And then I watched the video and I was like, "Huh. All right then." So you were asking, you wanted to hear about things that people don't like about Greg. Well, he doesn't like Black Powder, so I've got a problem with that.
I can give you lots of other reasons to have a problem with Greg too.
But yeah, no, it wasn't. They didn't rate the game very highly, but it's not what I would consider like a negative or a highly critical review. It wasn't like just dumping on the set of rules.
Yeah, I think there were some fair criticisms there. I mean,
absolutely.
I think one of the absolutely fair criticisms that virtually everybody who criticizes Black Powder for is the fact that it's somewhat vanilla. But it's designed to be that way, and I think that helps it achieve the goal that it wants to achieve, which is we're going to have a universal almost rule set that people can use for this period, and then they can introduce whatever rules they want to tailor their forces to the particular period that they're gaming. And I think that works great. It works really well in that system, and that's what I enjoy about it. But it's not for everybody. And you're right. They didn't savage it completely. And I think there's also some misunderstanding about what our ratings mean. Actually, if you end up with a rating of anything above 70 in our review system, you're actually doing very well.
Yeah.
That takes people paying attention to when we explain all of the breakdowns of the ratings and everything, and that can be a little bit much sometimes.
We're supposed to listen to that?
Yes. You're supposed to take notes. We're going to start putting quizzes at the end of every episode and have people email them in. And not that you can win anything. It's just whether we look down our nose at you.
You move your glasses a little further down.
Exactly.
Well, we are, of course, on all the things everywhere as Wargaming Recon. We're in the clouds. We're on the side of the bus. You'll find us on the pavement. Should you look down when you're staring at your phone? Wargaming Recon, we are there.
I was going to the bathroom earlier and you popped up, which was a little alarming.
I know. Hey, we're really that friendly and we don't know boundaries at all.
Clearly.
That's mostly John, not me. Just putting it out there.
I am a hugger, so I'd be one of those people who'd be like, "Who wants a hug?" And then the police are like, "So we heard you offering hugs to people. Like, what's going on here? Maybe you should come with us. Do you want a hug?"
All right.
We're everywhere and all the things. Steve, it's been wonderful having you on. Really.
Well, thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun. Hopefully, we can do it again sometime.
Oh, I sincerely hope so. Yeah.
I think that people need to make sure that they take some time to check out all the stuff that you guys are doing over at Little Wars. I am very, very impressed. And I can't believe you've only been doing it for a year.
Well, thank you. And again, we've been on air for a year, for lack of a better term, but our first season, it was about 2 years in the making. So a lot of work, and now trying to cram getting the second season together in about 6 months. That's been a challenge, but I think folks, if they check us out, subscribe, and see what we have on offer, are going to be pretty impressed with what we've been able to do for season 2 as well.
Yeah, they got to make sure they ring that bell, right? Isn't that what
absolutely ring the bell, hit the big red button, all of that stuff.
A big notification goes off.
Yeah, well, that's what we need. That we need that in the club now. We need it's almost like a bell ringing every time an angel gets its wings or whatever that saying is. We'll have like a giant gong that will make. Who should we make ring that? Chow. He looks serious enough to do that. We'll have Chow there, shirtless with a giant stick, just ringing a gong every time someone subscribes.
Yeah, new subscriber. Bong.
Exactly, and that won't get annoying at all.
No, never. I love it.
Everybody wants that.
You can have a live feed on it and just showing. So like as you get a new subscriber, and people can just watch gong.
Exactly. There we go. Get people to pay for it too.
Oh, there you go. I like that. They'll pay for you to not do it.
Oh, I'd fully endorse that idea.
There you go. That's your money maker. Forget everything else. Just throw that out the window. Gold. That's what you got.
You got it.
All right.
Well, thank you again, Steve, for coming on. And Adrian, of course, you're always a joy to have on as my co-host.
That is true.
Because no one smiles and is as ebullient enough as you are.
I am who I am, John. Don't try to change me.
I don't think anyone could. If that's okay, because you are who you chose to be. Flat Adrian.
Oh, God.
Well, I want to thank everyone for taking the time to listen to this episode of Wargaming Recon. I want to remind you that, yes, we are on all the things, no matter how you listen to podcasts. Be sure to subscribe, tell a friend, share, all that kind of cool stuff. And we have a Patreon campaign, so you can go over there and support the show for as little as $1 a month if you so choose at patreon.com/wargamingrecon. You should be able to find us right there. And remember, no matter how busy you are, no matter what's going on in your life, no matter how much time you're thinking about how you want to outfit and accessorize Flat Adrian, you know that you need to, you have to keep on gaming. Yes.
You see, the intro and the outro are the entire reason why I can't do the show when you're not here. Because people want it, and I'm not going to do it.